Everybody ready? Ready?
Yeah.
All right, listen.
It's your weekend show.
Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
With Bob Biermann.
It's great.
And welcome to your weekend show. I'm your host, Bob Biermann. I'm so glad you are with us. Can you believe we've come to the end of another month? This is the end of September. And come Thursday, it's a brand new month, the month of October. As we enter this last quarter of the year, there's a lot I want to share on my heart and my mind today. Some things that I never got to last week, some items in the news of the last 7 to 10 days that I'd like to cover, and toward the end of the program, things on a personal note as well that I think may help you in your journey in life. If you are new to the radio show and never heard it before, I would like to invite you to check out our website, which is yourweekendshow.com. That's yourweekendshow.com, and you can find us on Facebook also, Your Weekend Show. It's all one simple word, Your Weekend Show. I stand amazed each and every week as we do this program, and new listeners pop up from all over the United States, Canada, and oftentimes even around the world. I stand amazed, and I'm thankful that we have the opportunity to reach out and share stories from our lives. Some stories are heart-touching. Some are just purely happy, and sometimes we have to share some sad ones too. But it's all a part of going through this life. The purpose of this program is to help strengthen you each and every day in the challenges that we all face. We live in a changing world, and we're coming to the end of this month of September. I remember back in the end of August, I talked quite a bit about what to expect during September. So many little things are going on, and I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail, but many people, and myself included, believe that this month of September, more than any other time, is kind of a tipping point of sorts. We saw the signs back in the summer, back in July, that things are not as good in the world as we would like to believe that they are. In the United States, especially on the economic front, I really don't have any faith that we can survive the status quo the way we have for such a long time. I hate to say it, but I'll come out and use this term. I think we've artificially propped up the United States economy for way too long. And the bubble keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Now, I'm not saying this is going to happen. I'm very careful in what I call prognosticating or talking about end-time prophecy or things of that nature. I'm very cautious in what I say. But I have read and studied the Scriptures, and I have some very, very strong opinions. That's all they are. I have no idea of when the end of this age will occur and when our Lord will come back. I would never even claim to think so. But Jesus said, look for the signs, look for the things that you know. You see the seasons change, and this is my point. There's been a quantum change, and it's been occurring for a long time, but the pace has accelerated. It has accelerated to a point that it seems that every week something new hits that can be so totally problematic. I go back to the month of June, and I'm saying this, when marriage as we understood it was fundamentally changed. And since then we've just seen this onslaught of lawsuits, complaints, and changes. And things that people said never would happen are happening right before our very eyes. And what do we do about it? How do we change? What are we going to do? I believe that the United States and most of the Western world as we know it is on a path. I look at what's happening in Europe and all these so-called refugees coming out of Syria. And I'm reading now that many of these so-called Syrian refugees are not even Syrian. And they're not allowing the Christian Syrians a whole lot of exit and access. Why is that? When I look at the pictures of all these refugees coming across the border and waiting to move on to places like Germany, where they really want to be, I see a lot of young men. Where are the women and children? There's such a small amount. I am beginning, and I'm not beginning, I'll be honest. I really believe in my heart that these are not refugees at all in the true sense of the word. These are not refugees like we had after the Second World War and other places of the world. They claim to be refugees today, but their true heart and allegiance is with the Islamic world. I'm trying to avoid the political nature, but I'm going to come to defense of some comments that have been in the political circle. And I'm going to give you my opinion and why. First, we have to dispense with a mindset that people around the world globally and inherently think the same, negotiate the same, reason the same as you do. People in other parts of the world simply don't do that. In the Middle East, especially among devout Muslims, it is a completely different mindset than what we would have in the United States and Canada and much of Europe. They live in a very different world. And when they come to your world, they want to change your world to be like their world. How many Christians can go to Saudi Arabia and construct beautiful churches? How many Christians can go to virtually any place in the Middle East and construct a large church and be open about their faith without potentially, like in Iran, being put in prison or put to death? Yet they come here and demand that they can build their facilities. They demand that we honor all of their traditions while they slam ours. Dr. Ben Carson, and like I say, I'm not endorsing any kind of a candidate here. I'm just talking about something he said, was asked a very pointed question. Could you ever support a devout Muslim as president of the United States? And his answer was no. And a lot of people got very upset. How dare you say that? You know, there were Muslims serving in the Desert Wars and in recent years in Iraq and in Afghanistan. Yeah. It depends how devout they are, too. Even if only a third of Muslims are totally devout or 10%, that's still multiplied hundreds of millions. See, what we fail to understand about their culture in the Middle East versus our culture in the West, there's a huge dynamic. In Iran, for example, they have, quote, a civil government. They do have a president. They have a military. They have all those things. But the ultimate authority in Iran is not the president of Iran or their cabinets or any of what they have. It is a group of mullahs, religious leaders that are the ultimate and absolute final authority in Iran. And that goes across the board in any Islamic country. For you see, to Islam is not just a religion. It is a total encompassing way of life, right down to civil government. It's called Sharia law, and Sharia law is in direct contradiction to the Constitution of the United States and Canada and virtually anywhere in the Western world. They believe that their Sharia law should always trump any civil law, because that is the word of Allah to them. And they will fight to make that happen. I saw a story not long ago that came out of New Jersey. And not long ago, maybe a week and a half ago, a group of Muslims came in demanding that a certain holiday be recognized within a couple of weeks in the public schools. And it's kind of late to make a change like that now. And for over 3.5 hours of heated argument from these very devout Muslims, who then scream, someday we will be the majority and we will rule. Look at Europe. They've had this open arm acceptance and bringing in of people from the Middle East. In France, I can remember the riots over the years as they demand their special privileges and cars being burnt. Look at some of the states in the Netherlands regions that are just in deep and dire trouble because of the trouble they've brought in. Germany is about to face a crisis, and we're bringing hundreds of thousands of those individuals that are supposedly refugees to the United States. Are they really refugees, or are they an army building up from the inside, waiting to fight our very culture? I can tell you from my study of Scripture and understanding history, the history of the Muslim faith is something that most people do not understand. A lot of people will say, well, they have a right to be grieved. Look at the Crusades back around the year 1000, whatever. We went there and fought war with them. But here's what the left in particular in our politically correct society fails to tell you, that for 350 years before the Crusades were even declared, you had Muslims going into North Africa, going and fighting and taking over Turkey and Constantinople and that whole region, the Holy Land. They had gone into Spain, into France. They even attempted to ransack the city of Rome. For 300 years, they were on a march to conquer the entire known world. The Crusades, my friend, was not a war of aggression. It was a defensive war to claim and take back what had been taken by jihadists that killed and raped, and burned and destroyed, all in the name of their satanic god, Allah. And somebody hearing my voice saying the satanic god of Allah may be taking exception. But let me prove my point. In many Western textbooks, and I can remember 40 years ago in high school, in a civics class, social studies class, I guess they called it back then, in one of these textbooks, it kind of inferred that Judaism, Christianity, and being a Muslim, the Islam faith, all worship the same God. That's what we were told to believe in a secular textbook, that in that textbook, all these religions supposedly worship and believe in the same God. Well, they don't. In the Judeo-Christian history, yes, there is no doubt about it. Because, see, the Jewish people are longing for the Messiah. The Christians recognize the Messiah has come. They understand what it means. Islam rejects the Messiah. Islam considers many of the prophecies of the Old Testament in error. See, they believe Allah is their God, and if you ever study the real history of Islam and where it came from and how it was birthed, and I think I've talked about this before, but I'm feeling the need to go over that topic again. See, Muhammad was the son of a person who was in charge as, I guess for lack of a better term, a priest of a rock. And this rock contained 365 crevices, and each was believed to be inhabited by a demon for the day, and the head demon of all, his name was Allah. And Muhammad kind of inherited the family business, so to say, and there were not that many adherents or followers to his religion. But he traveled as a young man, and he learned bits and pieces about Christianity, because here's something a lot of people fail to remember. Beginning in that first century, as the church expanded out of Jerusalem, there are many places like what we know today as Iran and Iraq, had significant and growing Christian populations. Jewish people, after the year 70 A.D., had been dispersed all over the world, the Great Dispersia, after the fall of Jerusalem. You had Jewish people, you had Christians, all over. And Muhammad would pick up bits and pieces of these religions and look at his, and started writing what we now know as the Quran. And it seems to be, if you've ever read it, and I've looked through it a number of times, it's an evolving book that starts out very calm in the beginning and becomes very aggressive and conquering toward the end. He took bits and pieces of what he learned and intertwined them into nothing more than a satanic pagan religion. He didn't get very far at first, but then when he married a gal substantially older than he was and had money and power, he continued marketing his religion and finally decided, that you have the right, if you believe in Allah, to rob and lie and steal and kill the infidel and rape. This is what the Quran teaches. So please, don't tell me that Islam is a religion of peace. It has proven itself since the 7th century to be a religion of conquest more than any other religion in the history of the world. Terror events on a world scale are just astronomically done more from the Islamic faith than any other faith. So when someone like Ben Carson says, could I support a devout Muslim as the leader of the United States? I have to concur. The answer is no, because his true allegiance will be the conquering of the United States in the name of Islam. As we bring these refugees over, it's going to be a very, very difficult time in this world. Europe is going to be finding itself, as time marches on, finding itself in a war they never anticipated. Sometimes having a feel-good heart and ignoring reality is a very dangerous thing. Europe has done just that, and we are now doing that in this country. And I believe that in time, the damage, I wonder if we can ever recover from the damage that has been done. Our economy is not that good. It could begin to falter very soon. Are we going to go through quantitative easing 4? Are we going to print more funny money to prop the phoniness up of derivatives? And when they collapse and the banks are in trouble, and one day you wake up and your ATM card doesn't work, and your biggest concern is not going to be paying your mortgage, it's going to be finding food. We have created a scenario in this world that all sounds good, but its foundation is sand, and it's all going to collapse. And the jihadists that are ready to fight us will take advantage of that situation. That is my fear, my greatest fear. When we come back, I'm going to take a few minutes and talk about another news story that I ran across, and I want to give you my opinions on the life that we live in today and how political correctness is killing us. And as I promise, as we come to the end of today's program, we're going to be talking about some personal issues and things that we go through as in our relationships and in our day-to-day life. I want to thank you for taking the time to spend a substantial amount of your time with me on your weekend show. It's an honor, it's a privilege, and a blessing beyond any words that I could ever share of what this program means for me to do for you and the response that you give to me. If you agree or disagree with what I'm saying and what I've just said about Islam and the danger of that satanic faith, let me know. You can find me at yourweekendshow.com. That's yourweekendshow.com. Also on Facebook at Your Weekend Show. If you like conventional mail, and some people still do, let me give you the mailing address. You can write to True News, that's TRUNEWS, and just put on there. They'll figure out how to get it to me. The address is P.O. Box 690069, Vero Beach, Florida 32969. That mailing address again is True News, P.O. Box 690069, Vero Beach, Florida 32969. A lot to discuss, a lot to share when we come back. This is Your Weekend Show, and I'm your host, Bob Biermann.
On the air and online at yourweekendshow.com.
The Florida Bible Institute and Seminary exists to glorify Jesus Christ as Lord by preparing adults to evangelize, disciple, and minister to the world. Since 1973, the Florida Bible Institute and Seminary has fulfilled its mission of preparing men and women for ministry. The Florida Bible Institute and Seminary is accessible to students around the world through an online delivery system. Our mission is to equip faithful men and women for the work of ministry by teaching spiritual truths, imparting biblical knowledge, providing practical ministry opportunities, and ground them in the message of God's unconditional love and grace. If you would like to find out if the Florida Bible Institute and Seminary is the school for you, visit their website at tfbis.com. That's tfbis.com. The Florida Bible Institute and Seminary.
This is SunPower Radio World Band, a ministry outreach of Flowing Streams Church of Vero Beach, Florida.
It's Your Weekend Show.
This tired city was somebody's dream. On billboard horizon, as black as it seemed. A four-level highway across the land. We're building a home for the family of man.
And welcome back to Your Weekend Show. I'm your host, Bob Biermann. So glad you're with us on this last weekend in the month of September, as we get ready, as I told you before, the last quarter of the year. Your Weekend Show is a labor of love, something I really enjoy doing. It gives me an opportunity to bring out my pastor's heart, so to speak. And I spent a number of years in active ministry, but I've been in broadcast, way over 40 years now. I love both with a passion, so to have the opportunity to share with you as a pastor and at the same time, enjoy the business of broadcast has been a blessing to me. Speaking of broadcast, it's been an interesting week here at the Ministry of True News. One thing we've added to what we have is a local radio station here in Vero Beach, Florida. Now, I'll tell you, it's not a very powerful station. It's one of those low-powered FMs, but it covers our community quite nicely. I've had the privilege, because of my engineering background, to build this new radio station that just went on the air this week. There's a lot to be done over the next month. We're adding a better and bigger studio. We have a temporary studio we're using in a room right now as we wait for certain furnishings and items to come our way to complete the project. And over the next few weeks, that'll be done as well. We've been spending most of our time doing the things at the transmitter and tower site, and it's been a very interesting week, to say the least. About a month and a half, 2 months ago, when we didn't have a whole lot of rain down here, we got the antenna installed on a tower here in Vero Beach. And I thank the Lord that we got the antenna installed when we did before the rains came in, because of the large vehicles that had to be out there in the property. With all the rain we had for literally 6 or 7 straight weeks, has flooded the ground out there. Those vehicles never would have gone in. That antenna would not be going up. We've been waiting for certain things to occur and things to be done before we went on to the next level of this project. And we, this week, installed our link between the building we're in and that tower site about 4.5, 5 miles away from here. And we went out there on Monday. I met the people that were installing a fiber optic to make that link. And I went out there, and I'll share a picture. You can find it at yourweekendshow.com and also on Facebook. It'll be posted sometime over the weekend, of just what the grounds looked like when we got there that Monday morning. The ground was flooded, and it was covered with ducks. The guy from AT&T attempted to drive his vehicle onto that property, and I kind of warned him that there's some low spots and some high spots. I've been out there many times over the years. He got caught in a low spot, and he was buried in the mud. And it took a tow truck with a long winch to pull him out. That delayed us several hours. No matter where you walked, you were walking in standing water everywhere. I'm thankful that I happen to have a Jeep. Not that can always be your salvation, because mine is only a two-wheel drive Jeep. I discovered there could be issues doing that, because even I got stuck the other day. Matter of fact, the day before I record this broadcast. I've been out there 4 times, maybe 6 times total this week, and I knew how to get in and out, and I never had any particular problem. But this last trip, tidying up the last things for the transmitter site to get it on the air, I got caught, and even I had to be towed out. And what made it worse, just kind of share what happens in life, and how I reacted is so different than maybe how I would have reacted years ago. I'm stuck out there. It's hot. It's humid. It's getting ready to rain. And I'm trying to figure a way to get out of there. And I ended up stepping into a mess of fire ants, as they say in the South. A mess of them. I look at the blisters and stuff on my hands. My feet are covered. There was a time in my life I would have probably reacted in anger and just disdain. But for some reason, on this particular trip, it didn't bother me. Oh, was it painful? Yeah, it's been painful. But it hasn't broken my spirit. In time, these bumps, these rashes will all heal in short order. And it's all right. I realized something when I was out there doing this, and like I say, it was yesterday in terms of when I record this broadcast. I'm recording this broadcast on Friday, the 25th of September. And I thought about something when I got up this morning. All around the world, there are Christians that are being persecuted for their faith. And they're going through a whole lot worse than stepping into a nest of fire ants. Yeah, I may have a couple. I may have 60, 70, 100 of these bumps on my feet and my hands and other places. But, in a short amount of time, as itchy and as painful as they can be, they'll be gone. If that's the biggest sacrifice I made this week for the cause of Christ, then I made no sacrifice at all. And that was the blessing that God laid upon my heart. That, it could be worse. We talked in the first segment about all those refugees that are coming out of the Middle East, or so-called refugees. They are not refugees, I'm telling you. Believe me on this. Many of them are implanted jihadists ready to take on Europe and are ready to take on the United States, Canada, and the world. They pledged to dominate and run the world under a caliphate. They will bring about the apocalypse if they have to get the job done. They are determined. They will sacrifice their lives. They will do whatever it takes. In this country, it's amazing. We are being told we have to be so politically correct when it comes to the faith of Islam that we cannot say anything negative about the Prophet Muhammad. Well, I'll tell you, the man was nothing more than a rapist. The man was nothing more than a murderer and a thief. That's the founder of this religion called Islam, the peaceful religion of Islam. It is based on warfare and conquest and lies. You can lie and kill the infidel, that's the non-believer, if they refuse to believe. You can tax them. ISIS, which I believe is something created by our own government in the United States to fight against Syria, is a major problem. Like I say, we're told in the West we have to be politically correct. We cannot criticize anything Islam. We must be accepting and understanding of their culture. We are told that they made great contributions to the Western culture, and I'm trying to find out where. What, conquest? Rape? Pillaging? destroying, that's the heritage. That's the heritage of Islam. I'm telling you. And we have to be politically correct. We can't say anything wrong for fear of being called an Islamophobe, a bigot, or worse. I'm telling you, please understand, there is a culture war going on. But most important, there is a spiritual warfare going on. It wasn't long ago that a group of people met to share caricatures of the Prophet Muhammad. And jihadists attempted to kill them right here in the United States. Is that a religion of peace? We can look at example after example of, are you ready for this, what they call honor killings? They've occurred in the United States where a Muslim man will kill a woman because of something she's done, even if she's a rape victim. It's called an honor killing. In the Middle East, we're told to embrace gay rights in this country. We are told to accept and accommodate and do whatever it needs to be done to normalize it. And also we need to be friendly, and we need to be understanding of those of the Islamic faith who in that part of the world will throw gay people off buildings and stone them to death, or burn them alive or drown them. How is that compatible with the Western culture? A good example, just a good example of what I call the stupidity of how we do things. And I'm saying the stupidity starts at the White House and works its way down to the trenches. A couple of weeks ago, and the narrative you get from the mainstream media, I hate to even call them that. They're not even media anymore. They stopped being journalists. They're nothing more than state-run propagandists. Sorry, MSNBC. Sorry, CNN. Sorry, ABC, NBC, and CBS, New York Times, Washington Post, LA Times, Chicago Tribune. You are nothing but statist propagandists. You don't even know how to investigate a story anymore. You refuse to do it. Instead, you get your marching orders and the template comes your way in an email and you just seem to follow suit. Always with the same talking points. Just imagine that. How does that happen? Well, the story popped up, happened in Texas, about a young boy who invented a clock. Have you heard about that story? We're going to talk about it right now. Invented a clock. This young high school freshman, the beginning of the school year, he invented a clock and had it in a little pencil case. One of those metal pencil cases. Looks like a miniature briefcase. Yeah, he invented a clock. And he took it to school. Now, there's been an implication that maybe it was for a science fair or science project. Nope, that was not the case at all. Not the case at all. There was no science fair. There was no science project. He put this device in this little case. He showed it to one teacher that morning who said, well, you've done this, but if I were you, I wouldn't show it around the school because it's not the appropriate thing to do. Now, I'm going to stop right here. In our politically correct world that we live in today, and because of all the things that have happened over the past 15, 20 years with school shootings and everything that goes with it, security, we have come a long way in 40 years to this no-tolerance policy at most of our schools. Back in the 1970s when I went to high school in a small town in upstate New York, it was not uncommon during the hunting season to have students with vehicles parked in the school parking lot that just came back from hunting that had rifles. We never thought about anybody shooting anybody. I can remember as a senior in high school during the hunting season, one guy came to class and he had a Bowie knife strapped to his leg. I mean, this thing could cut up a deer. Did anybody panic that he was going to kill students? No. Matter of fact, one of the teachers happened to catch it and was so impressed because he's a fellow hunter that we passed it around. Man, have we changed in 40 years, but I digress. We've gotten to the point that it wasn't that many months ago that a young elementary school child, in the way that he ate his Pop-Tart, somebody claimed because of the way he chewed on the edge, it looked like a gun, a handgun. He got suspended from school because of the zero tolerance policy. The same schools that hand out condoms and take young girls without parental permission to clinics for abortions and birth control. Now, if you bring an aspirin to school, well, the zero tolerance policy can get you thrown out. See, in other words, we have taken common sense and we have trashed it, ditched it, and ignored it. We are a country that was founded by geniuses, and I'm telling you, normally you don't hear me rant and rave, that are run by complete idiots. A country founded by geniuses, now run by complete, politically correct idiots. And we've bought it upon ourselves. We have bought it upon ourselves. We have people that vote for one reason and one reason only, what they can get and not what they give. President John F. Kennedy, when he was inaugurated in office in January of 1961, had a speech. And whether you agreed with his policies or not, actually, as you look back in history in terms of economic policy and certain things that he did, I don't agree with everything, but I give him credit for some of the things that he did as a leader. But he set the tone when he said, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. We've come a long way from that today. It's what kind of EBT benefits can I get? What kind of subsidy for housing can I get? That's permeating in our society. And it drains our capital and takes away our drive to produce. We have those that produce and those that live off the fruits of other people's labor at a higher and higher rate, to the point that those who produce won't want to produce anymore. But getting back to our story from Texas, the inventor of the clock. Now remember, this is, if you've seen the pictures, and I have seen the pictures, the videos, I've seen what's been released by the police department, what it looked like. I want you to imagine what looks like a small metal type case, not that big. And inside of it, when you open it up, is supposed to be an invented clock. Well, let me tell you what it actually is. Some of you may already know the story, but I will tell you what it is. This young boy, whose name is Mohammed, did not invent a clock. In fact, he did not build a clock at all. What we had here is a 1978, probably somewhere in that era, maybe a little later, Makranta clock. That was a trade name, brand name of Radio Shack at the time. One of the first big digital display clocks, big red display. Electronic circuit boards that look pretty rough because that's before computer-aided design. So these circuit boards almost look like they're hand-drawn. And what he had done was he took all the guts out of this alarm clock, digital alarm clock, that had a 9-volt battery backup, meaning you didn't have to plug it in the wall for the thing to operate. It would operate on a battery. He dismantled it, and he put it into this little case. People have seen pictures, and they, not knowing the story, are asked, what does this thing look like? The first reaction looks like a suitcase bomb. Well, I'm going to share a little bit of my life here. I've been in ministry and I've been in broadcast, but I did spend 4 years in a time in my life that, in a transition, not that many years ago, where I needed a job and I was in a community where the opportunity for broadcast and ministry just was not open at the time. And I ended up working for an emergency management division of a county, ultimately working for the sheriff's office in emergency management in that county. And in part of my work, I worked with the local bomb squad in terms of mostly public relations and videos and things of that nature. And this county had a very, very good bomb squad. And I will tell you, I'm proud of the people that I worked with. to imagine this, to work with people that truly love the Lord Jesus Christ as their Savior, yet they serve their community. And a lot of you may not know this, a lot of what a bomb squad does, it's not that they're going after bombs planted in schools and what have you. You'd be surprised, especially in South Carolina and other rural parts of the world. You know, an elderly couple dies and they're out there in the country and people start going through the bar and they'll find old dynamite and all kinds of stuff. You know, because back in the day in clearing brush and clearing trees and making roads and what have you, dynamite was frequently used and it would end up being stored somewhere. Now it's very volatile and very dangerous, so the bomb squads go out and they find all this 30, 40, and 50-year-old dynamite and other explosives that had a legitimate purpose in their time, but they have to be removed. People forgot about them. There are cases that I remember quite well where this one individual that had served in the Second World War ended up, we don't know how he got it, but had a case of hand grenades, World War II vintage, they discovered in a barn. They had to be removed. So a lot of what a bomb squad does is take care of disposal of old ordnance and explosives that are used in the construction trade that need to be dealt with. And the occasional case where somebody actually does make a pipe bomb or some other explosive device, they are well trained. These individuals are consistently going to school and seminars and training, and I have been out there in the test ranges to watch them deal with a real type bomb to make sure that they can deal with that problem in an environment. I know the capacities, and I was talking just a few days ago to my friend who's the head of that squad, and I had just begun to see the pictures, and his name is Danny. I'll give you his first name. I said, Danny. I said, well, when you see that picture, what's your first reaction? He said, it's the textbook picture that whenever we go to training is what a small bomb, like a little suitcase bomb, would look like. And I said, Danny, if that was a real bomb, and I said, could that be made into a real bomb? He said, absolutely, Bob. He goes, understand, there have been a lot of bombs made out of similar clocks that use the 9-volt battery backup. The clock will run and fire the alarm and send a voltage out. And that little voltage is sufficient to fire a small blasting cap. And with a small amount of like C4 explosive or something along that nature, you can cause a tremendous amount of devastation in a very small container such as that. Add a bag of ball bearings and other things for shrapnel, you can really cause some serious damage. So, granted, the first teacher was able to understand as a science teacher that there was no explosive material in there, and his advice was to, put it aside and don't show it around. But what did he do? What did this young clock inventor do for the rest of the day? He took it from class to class and showed it off. And during an English class, it started making noise. A teacher saw it who's not a science teacher, and it has all the looks. And trust me, I worked with schools in my time in emergency management for things like active shooters and bomb scares. I was trained in that because I was doing the media for that. So I've learned a lot. And trust me, in that part of Texas where it wasn't that many miles away from where there was, there's been honor killings, there has been jihad, there has been people killed. In a school that is majority-minority, in this case, the prudent thing to do is, you have to investigate it. Find out what it is. And from what we are now learning, bit by bit, that the mainstream media is slow to hand out, is that when confronted, he basically was passive-aggressive, this young boy, and refused to cooperate. When his father arrived, then becomes the time that it's all, you singled him out because he is a Muslim. He looks different, and his name is Mohammed. Well, look at his father's past, this young clock builder's dad. He is a person that spends his time on the Islamic cause. He is living in the United States, but has run not once but twice for the president of Sudan, which is a Muslim country. He is devout. He is a devout Muslim, and he is using this opportunity, to further the cause of, silencing the voice of those that are in opposition to the Islamic faith. I want you to think about this for a second. He is doing everything in his power to silence and to ridicule and to put down those that are critical of this satanic religion of Islam. Because I'm telling you, friend, it is a satanic religion born from the pits of hell. Its only purpose is to conquer and destroy, not to build up life, but to tear down and destroy. And our President of the United States of America, before all the facts are in, are inviting this young genius inventor who didn't invent anything. He stuffed the guts of an old clock into a metal case and made it look like a bomb. And he's being rewarded by going to the White House. The money from a GoFundMe account is being used to send the family to meet dignitaries from the United Nations. Microsoft and is sending him scholarships and stuff to play with too, because he's such a great inventor. I got news for you. When I was 7 years old, I was taking apart clocks and radios, but I wasn't shoving them into a case. I took them apart to learn how each component worked and then put it back together or try to improve it. I never would have shoved it in a case. Why would I do that? To take it to school and show it off. A big difference. We find out that this boy's father has been very cooperative and has had many relationships with the organization called CARE, which is the citizens, that are all for the Arab, and American and Islamic relations. The Council on American Islamic Relations, which is nothing more than a front for jihad and the destruction of this country. There is a plan of action, and understand something that makes us different in the Western world from the Middle Eastern world. We as Westerners, we want instant gratification. We want things done in our lifetime. But to those in the Islamic world, they know it may take centuries beyond their lives for the goal to be reached, but that does not stop their zeal or their intensity, because they believe they are on a just and right cause. America, we are facing a danger that is greater than any danger we've ever felt before. And we are inviting them through the front door. I don't know whether it's by design from this White House that we bring these people in for the destruction of America. When people were asked, about President Obama and is he a Christian or not, Christianity would show evidence. Anybody can claim to be a Christian. I could tell you that I'm a Christian. I could tell you I'm anything. But unless you see the evidence in somebody's life, how do you prove it? One of the greatest atheists that ever lived, Nietzsche, had a great question and a great comment that I've never forgotten. When he posed the question, or this comment, "Do not tell me about your Redeemer until you can prove to me that you have been redeemed." Well, let me say that again. Do not tell me about your Redeemer until you can prove to me that you have been redeemed. Another way that I like to put this, if you were accused of being a Christian, would there be sufficient evidence to convict you? And see, I'm sorry to say this. I truly am. I'm sorry to say this, but President Obama, the roots of Christianity are very elusive to me. His young childhood being around basically the Marxists of his day, a father that was a Muslim, and he went to school in a Muslim country, and he was in school in Kenya, in a madras, where they train at a young age. It is suspected, that's why we don't see so many of his college records, that he actually went to college under a foreign student visa as a foreign exchange student. I don't know whether all that's true or not, but then when he finally settles down in Chicago and needs Christian roots, he goes to the church of Jeremiah Wright, a church that that still does, or maybe not anymore, a secret society that protected gays, that they could live their bathhouse life, but he would encourage them to still have the appearance of being married. There's so many things wrong with that church that Jeremiah Wright had, and when you look over the messages that were preached there, I don't see one of redemption and grace in Jesus Christ and a changed life. I see something more at war with God than in harmony with God. So there we are. We have a guy that didn't invent a clock, that had something that looked like a bomb, and America's being told we're stupid and we're bigots and we have Islamophobia. You know, let's turn the table a little bit. Let's go to South Carolina or North Carolina or maybe somewhere in rural Georgia, Tennessee or Alabama. And let's imagine a white boy. Like I say, I'm not dealing with race here. I just want to bring to you a scenario and show you how the media would react. Let's say you had this white boy that came out of a known racist family that, they believed in the KKK, or they may be what they call skinheads or white supremacists. Yes, they're out there. I don't deny that. And let's say their young child had taken apart a 1978 Radio Shack clock and stuffed it in a metal box and took it to a predominantly minority elementary or junior high or high school. What do you think the reaction would be? Would he be getting an invitation to the White House, or would he be expelled from school under a no-zero policy? I think you know the answer if you have even 1% of your common sense left. My friend, we are living in perilous times. We are letting and inviting the enemy in, the enemy of our souls that wants to destroy us. We have become morally bankrupt. We have no backbone. Our leadership is bought and paid for, I think, all too often, even those that claim to be conservative and even those that claim to be loving liberals, they're bought off. There's another agenda going on that's going to affect this world in ways you simply cannot imagine. I believe in some levels we've gone past the point of no return. We have people that choose to ignore truth and believe a lie and believe error. No, there was no clock invented. America is being culturally disemboweled, being destroyed from within. We are being divided into groups. We are no longer individuals, we are groups. And as Abraham Lincoln and others have said it before, a nation or a house divided amongst itself will fail. The work of tearing down this nation continues day in and day out. And I'm telling you, my friend, at an increasingly accelerated pace. There are those that believe when times get bad, Jesus will come back and take them away before it gets too bad. But I look at those that are suffering for the cause of Christ. You know that in the Islamic world, I want you to digest this figure right now. Every few minutes, a Christian is martyred for their faith in the Middle East. That's right. Every few minutes, a Christian is martyred for their faith in the Middle East. Whole communities of Christians that have been there for literally 10, 15, 13 centuries have been obliterated, destroyed, churches gone. Christians are under persecution. They're being eliminated. The time has come to make your stand. Do you stand with this world and the its self-destruct mode, or do you stand with something greater? Do you realize that there may be something missing in your life? These truly are perilous times. And we have so-called Christian churches that are preaching all kinds of new gospels. I remember the words from St. Timothy that were written by St. Paul to St. Timothy for in these last times, in these perilous times, people will reject sound doctrine. And they will heap to themselves teachers like the Joel Osteens of this world. These prosperity teachers, all about feel good. Feel good. We never talk about sin or redemption. It's a motivational speech to feel good and have good coffee in a big place with good music. No, we don't hear about redemption and lives changed anymore. We have mainline churches that just adopt whatever new wind of cultural shift comes down and tries to justify it and get away with it just to keep people happy. Where do you stand today? Whose side are you on? I know one thing, I'm not a perfect person at all. St. Paul reminds us that all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. Nobody can ever earn their salvation. It's simply a gift from God. Today could be the day that you take care of that part of your life by saying, Lord, I know that I'm a sinful being and I'm unworthy of your love. I'm unworthy of all the gifts you have allowed me to have. But I want to know that even in these times of persecution, I can get through. Like I said before when I started this segment, I talked about something as minor, something as simple as being covered in red ant bites that hurt. But if that's all the sacrifice I made for the cause of Christ this week, I've sacrificed nothing. And there are those in the world this week and even yesterday when I was getting my fire ant bites that suffered with the loss of their life. I'm glad to know that I have the knowledge that I do have a Savior in Jesus Christ. Can you believe it? Another week has come and gone here on your weekend show. I'm your host, Bob Biermann. I want to thank you for taking the time that you do each and every week to join us here on the program. I would love to hear from you. You can go to our website, yourweekendshow.com. That's yourweekendshow.com. And you can find us on Facebook at Your Weekend Show. Hey, do me a favor this week. If you go to the webpage, and especially if you go to Facebook, would you like us on Facebook? Would you share it with your friends? I'd love to have a whole bunch of new likes this week. It means a lot. The show is being shared. It can be heard on YouTube. It can be heard on Spreaker. We're getting it out in a lot of locations. And also, of course, we're on international shortwave on WRMI, based out of Okeechobee, Florida, on 3 different frequencies, 4 times over the weekend at 5850 kilohertz, at 7455 kilohertz, and 9395 kilohertz. If you happen to listen by shortwave, let me know. It means a lot. We're getting a lot of response, especially out of the 9395 frequency in places like Canada, in Ohio, Michigan, Kentucky, even New York State. And we've had people as far away as Asia and the Middle East that have heard these broadcasts. Are you one of those that heard? Once again, our regular mailing address for the weekend show is True News, TRUNEWS, and that's P.O. Box 690069, and the zip code 32969. That, once again, is P.O. Box 690069, 32969. Once again, on Facebook at Your Weekend Show, one word, and yourweekendshow.com. Well, we didn't get everything accomplished I wanted to this week, but we'll try again next week. Until then, this is Bob Biermann saying, may God's richest blessings be upon you.
It's Your Weekend Show with Bob Biermann.